The Panasonic Lumix G9, one of the great unsung cameras of 2018. 4K 60 frames per second, 6.5 stops of stabilization, flip screen, awesome preamps, and a great image? Why aren't more people using this? What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. If you are one of the 50,000 people that joined the channel in the last year, you might not know that I've actually made a video on the Lumix G9 before. When this was first released, this was the very first camera I bought the day it came out. I was so excited for this camera, and to be honest, it is still one of the best I've used all year. I did end up breaking mine almost immediately after getting it, but that was caused by late night driving to get the DJI Mavic Air, recording late into the night to make sure the video came out the next day, and then trying to fix a small problem with one of the SD card slots with a butter knife. And yes, every word of that story is true. But it's been out for a year, so let's revisit it and see if it's still feasible as a YouTube/online content creation camera. First off, I do want to thank my friends over at BHC Photo for sending this to me to make some videos out of. If you'd like to get your very own, there will be links in the description below. And to be honest, you might want to get one because as much as it's not talked about, this is one of the strongest YouTube cameras on the market today. I know I speak in hyperbole from time to time, but this is one of the best. And if you haven't seen that very poorly white balanced early video about the Lumix G9, yes, everything is blue due to, one of us not knowing what they were doing. That was me. Let's cover the basic specs to get us all on the same page. And quick disclaimer, since this is marketed as a photography camera, we'll see. I'm not a photographer, nor am I a professional videographer. I make home videos in these YouTube videos, so those are the specs we'll be covering today. I mean, that's how you know video is so awesome. It can even overtake stills cameras. The Lumix G9 has a 20.3 micro four thirds sensor. It can record in up to 4K 60 frames per second and 1080p at up to 180 frames per second. It has 5-axis in-body image stabilization and can utilize Panasonic's dual IS2 technology. It has dual UHS-2 memory card slots, and it has Panasonic's depth from defocus autofocus. Now, if there is one word I want you to keep in your mind while we make this video, it is versatility. I'm going to be saying that word a lot. The Lumix G9 might be one of the most, if not the most versatile cameras on the market today. Physically, the camera feels very high quality. Some notable aspects of the camera are the wide array of physical buttons and dials just on the camera itself. Just from the top of the camera, you can change the white balance, the ISO, and the exposure compensation. Now, I don't exactly like where the record button is on top, but it's a Lumix camera, so one of the benefits is when it's in movie mode, you just hit the shutter button. It's simple, right? But so many cameras screw that up. You just hit the shutter button and you start recording. Also on the top of the camera is an LCD display that will show you the current settings of the camera, not just with photography stuff like the ADD, it actually is up here. And one of my favorite ways to switch around recording modes, a mode dial. The left side of the camera is stacked with a microphone in jack, headphone out port, a full HDMI port. I love this. Seriously, every camera needs to have full HDMI port. And a USB port. Notable for this particular USB port, and something that makes the G9 very versatile, even more so than the GH5 or GH5S, is the G9 comes with a cable that allows you to power the camera straight from this port on the side. That's so incredibly useful. I run a live stream every Saturday, and I'm constantly running out of battery life. Well, this, you don't have to buy an accessory like with the Z6. You just plug in the cable, and it just works. That is incredible. The right side of the camera is not as exciting, but it does have a very internet-friendly dual card slot. I mean, you gotta give the internet something to not complain about, right? On the back of the camera are the 3 customizable buttons, a very nice control dial, and the big attraction is the fully articulating touchscreen. Again, all cameras need to have this. This screen allows for quick and easy access into one of the most user-friendly menu systems in the camera game today. I love Panasonic's menu system. It is the best. Not only that, but with all of the additional video features, it's really easy to customize the screen to allow you to spend your time in front of the camera. But you can still monitor your focus. You can monitor your audio, your settings, everything. I get very frustrated when people say that, oh, only narcissists want a front-facing screen, but that could not be further from the truth. I mean, think about it. If If you are talking to someone, you should be looking them in the eye, right? So the example here means that we should be looking into the camera. Like right now, I could look over here and see my audio, I could see my focus, I could see all the settings on this camera, but I'm not staring at myself. I'm looking at you because you are what matters. So all this is doing is showing me that everything's fine, it's framed correctly, it's exposed correctly, it's everything that I want. And then I go back to looking at you because again, you are the one that matters. And you want to know that all of those things are right, and you want to make sure that all of those things before we hit the record button, because we won't be able to look again. You know, unless something crazy goes on with the screen, which we will then hopefully be able to see. Fully articulating screens for life, son. Finally, the front of the camera also has 2 customizable buttons that are very useful. I mean, just more customizable buttons, the better. Before we get into the big categories, there are a few other things inside of the menu that I want to talk about here because they don't really fit neatly anywhere else in the video. For a photography camera, this thing is stacked for video recording features. It has things like focus peaking, zebras, histograms, and some really awesome features only found in these Panasonic cameras like IS lock. IS lock basically makes the camera look like it's on a tripod when you're hand holding it. I mean, it is a fantastic feature. And there are much more expensive cameras out there that are like video cameras that don't have the video features of this stills camera. Okay, back to the regular part of the video. Now it's time to cover the 3 most important aspects of a camera for YouTubers / online content creators. First up, image quality. Like I mentioned in the spec sheet, this photography camera can record in up to 4K 60 frames per second. Now that's not necessarily a video quality spec per se. I've said that I think 4K 60 frames per second is a little overrated, but I feel like it shows a deeper investment into the video side of the camera than maybe another stills type camera, you know, like a DSLR. The video quality coming out of this thing is straight up amazing. It is awesome. I think it's some of the best looking video I've seen on a camera at this price point. Now, one of the negatives, as it's not fully slated towards video realm, is there are only a few recording modes. You're only gonna get 8-bit internal. There's no way to record in a log format. It does have the flatter Cinelike D and V profiles, so if you wanna do a little bit of grading, you know, that could work for you, but don't expect to be able to pull off any crazy amounts of recording mode like in the GH5. But don't take my word for it, let's hop outside and do the very important outside video / vlogging test. Welcome to the video / vlogging test of the Lumix G9. And you know what? This time, we just had it all ready to go. Normally, I get so excited to do these, I just kind of like set up the camera and then get ready to go. But this time, we're ready. So let's turn it on, get to the vlogging. I do really like this camera though. If you don't know, I'm a big fan of this camera. Okay. Vlogging test begin. Whoa. Okay, so this is the 5th time we've done the vlogging test on the Panasonic G9, like no kidding. But I want to get it right for you guys. We're having problems with the other camera I'm using right now. I've never used a Sony camcorder, and there's some fiddliness to it that I wasn't aware of. But this is the vlogging test of the Lumix G9. It is the Panasonic 8 to 18mm lens. We've got it set to aperture priority mode with auto ISO, auto everything else. And this is the image quality you can expect to get. The big benefit of the Lumix G9 is it has some of the best stabilization on the market, period. And that's not just Panasonic cameras, that is all cameras. It's got 6.5 stops of built-in stabilization. Like this lens right now, this lens is not stabilized. It's not a stable lens at all, but you'd be hard pressed to know that because just how awesome it works, right? And it does do a really good job. I really like the image quality coming out of this camera. I mean, I'm kind of a, in all fairness, I'm kind of a Panasonic fanboy. I may not have a Panasonic camera right now, but I'm always like, they're always drawing me because I started off with a Panasonic camera. They will probably always be like my favorites. And this one is no exception. The image quality is great. The audio is great. You're hearing a Rode Video Mic Pro Plus right now. And it's just, the built-in preamps are great. Everything about it's great. The image quality is so great. If you decide to get the kit lens, which is a 12 to 60, this is 12 right now, just so you can kind of gauge that too. One of the benefits of getting that kit lens is the 12 to 60 has stabilization built into it. You can take advantage of what Panasonic calls their dual IS technology, so it will be even more stable than this right now, which is, that's amazing. Yeah, okay, hold on. Let's see how the auto works. Direct sunlight. I can't even see the screen anymore because it's so bright. But that's how the auto works. Okay. That's enough vlogging right now. Back to the video. And welcome to the indoor/studio test of the Lumix G9. Now we are cheating a little bit. We were just recording on a Sony 1-inch camcorder. This is the NX80, which is a great camcorder and all that, but this is the image quality coming out of the Lumix G9. There are some slight differences, like I had to use a different microphone. We're using the Rode VideoMic Pro Plus now because I had an XLR mic going into the Sony. So the audio will be a little bit different and the image quality will be a little bit different because I'm kind of cheating. I popped a prime lens on this thing because, you know, I can. But this is the image quality you can expect to get. This is the audio you can expect to get out of a pretty standard setup. I think the image quality out of this thing is shockingly good. And it's so good that I would have no... Sometimes we make these videos, I'm like, yeah, it works okay indoors, but there are other cameras I would prefer. This is a camera that I would prefer to use. Like if I were given this and said, hey, this is your YouTube camera, you can only use this indoors and you can only use this to do stuff, I would be perfectly fine using this for just about anything because the image quality is fantastic. It's doing pretty well in low light. I mean, yes, it's a prime lens, but this is a $150 prime lens, by the way. So this lens is not gonna break the bank. You could find a used G9 and this lens for about $1,000. Like, then you would be set to go. I mean, it's fantastic, but you will, since I'm nowhere near the camera to touch it, I can't use the little touchscreen hack, but you can set up the Panasonic app, which works really well. So from right here, I can control the focus point, so I can focus on the background if I want to. Now it's focusing on the background, or I can have it focus back on my face. Like, it is incredibly, incredibly useful. And this is one of the most powerful apps of cameras anywhere. And this will work with the G7, the G85, the GH5, the G9, the GH5S. It's really great. And so don't let the autofocus scare you away from the Lumix series of cameras, because they are packed with video features. Okay, back to the video. But what really matters is the most important aspect of a camera, fiddliness. So fiddliness is the most important aspect of cameras for me personally. So what is it? Well, there's two parts of it really. There is the first part, which is how easy is it to get the camera set up to get the footage that you want. So how easy is it? Is the ISO button easily accessible? Is it easy to customize it? If you want to customize it, you don't necessarily want to use what the camera manufacturer, you know, put in themselves. Does it have a screen that is also easy to use? Hint, hint. And the Lumix G9 is actually a very, very unfiddly, least fiddly. It doesn't take a lot of fiddling to get it set up initially. Like, all the buttons are easy to use. You can customize so many of these things. There's a whole array of physical buttons and dials on this thing. Like we said, it's got a fully articulating touchscreen, so you can change all the settings while you're in front of the camera too before you hit record, and that's very, very useful. It's just, I love Panasonic cameras in that how easy it is to customize them. It's got what, right here I see function 1, 2, 3. We've got 2 on the front, but you can also change up like what the main buttons do, and it's great, and it feels great. It's great all around. But part number 2 of fiddliness might be even more important, and that is, once you hit record, how easy is it to get the footage you want out of the camera? And again, the Lumix G9 is an incredibly unfiddly camera. The stabilization is great, the image quality is great, the preamps are great, and that makes the audio so good. The problem you will run into with fiddliness, just like on this and all other Panasonic cameras right now, is they do continue to use their contrast-based autofocus system, which they call depth from defocus. Now, I've found that with all the updates they've given to the GH5, the GH5S, and the G9, that it's actually pretty good now at getting the subject in focus. So it's not necessarily about getting the subject in focus, but the problem you'll run into is things like the background here. We're currently using a Sony Handycam, so we should not be having this problem. But as the Panasonic continues to like judge where it needs to be focusing, like if you're moving in or out, you're in or out, the background, you'll see the background like pulse. And like in a situation like this where we've got a lot of like lighting right here, it would be super obvious, and it kind of makes it unusable. There are some really easy workarounds to make sure that you don't need to use continuous autofocus. So like we mentioned, that fully articulating touchscreen, right? Well, you can pop the Lumix G9 into manual mode, and if you are close enough to like touch the camera, you can set the camera up, drag your finger to where you want, let go, and it will focus wherever you want, generally like on your face if you're doing like vlogging, and it just stays, and then you don't have to mess with it. And if you don't want to do that, you can also use the Panasonic phone app, which is probably the best camera app ever, which gives you full manual control of the camera, you know, within Wi-Fi radius. So wherever you're gonna go, it will work, which is so useful. And I know I've dogged on Panasonic in the past for their autofocus, but it's just so, like, their cameras are so good. Like this, you can get one of these used for about $1,000. Like 4K 60 for $1,000, like that's incredible. Okay, that's enough of me. I'm gushing a little bit because I do like this camera, but back to the video. Last up, but very, very important when it comes to these interchangeable lens camera systems, ecosystem. Something that I very much like about the Micro Four Thirds system is you have two first-party manufacturers releasing OEM lenses for these cameras. Panasonic and Olympus both make an awesome array of lenses. Not only that, but there's a huge number of adapters, grips, cages, everything to set these cameras up. Almost every single DSLR lens system are available for the Lumix G9 through an adapter, making it one of the, if not the most versatile cameras to get into. Even with Panasonic making full-frame cameras here in the future, I do still think that the Micro Four Thirds system is one of the most well-rounded and future-proof going forward. That's not a popular statement because we all want full-frame, APS-C full-frame, huge sensors, but I really like what Micro Four Thirds has going for it. So what, right? So should you get a Lumix G9 almost 1 year later? Now that's a tough question because 2018 was a fantastic year for video cameras. We've had some doozies come out at fantastic price points. The X-T3 at $1,500 is a darn near cinema camera for a reasonable price. We also have the A7 III and the Z6 that are two powerhouse full-frame cameras for around $2,000. But I do think there is a gap in the market at about the $1,000 price range, and the Lumix G9 fills that very well. It's got better stabilization than anything Sony puts out, it's got better image quality in my opinion than anything Canon puts out, and it's got, well, nothing Nikon does in this price range is very good, but it does better than that. I think the Lumix G9 is a fantastic purchase. If you were looking to upgrade from a DSLR, maybe you were like me and you got the Lumix G7 and you want something with a little more usability, a little more beefy specs, I would absolutely get this. If you're looking for your very first camera, but you have a little bit more of a budget than somebody that's just like starting out from scratch, yeah, the Lumix G9 is amazing. I mean, I am shocked at how much I've enjoyed using the G9 during the last 2 weeks. The audio is great, the colors are great. There's only two things that you potentially have to give up, and that's the sensor size and the autofocus. But honestly, I think the rest of the features more than cover for those. In fact, much like when we made the G7 video, these 2 weeks of the G9 have made me decide that I want better audio, I want better stabilization, and I want the flip screen. I'm gonna be moving away from my full frame workflow and back into a GH5. Like, I think the Micro Four Thirds system is one of the best systems on the market, especially for us online content creators. Thanks for watching.